I grew up in a small town in southern Indiana back in the 1960s, Columbus, Indiana. And Columbus was not very big. Like I say, one high school in the town at that time. It was a big high school because we predominantly brought kids in from around Bartholomew County, so we were a county school, and so we had about 3,000 kids in the class. And as far as I could tell, pretty much everybody was white. We had a handful of black students in our class, and so I didn't really connect with them as I was growing up because I didn't run in those circles. But it was the 60s, and the 60s were scary. We did have racial tensions across the United States, although we didn't really see that in Columbus, Indiana. But we had the Vietnam War. And so we had, the 60s were a bad decade as far as problems, socioeconomic problems in the U.S. And, and I was probably much more impacted by the Vietnam War because I knew people who went to Vietnam and I knew people who did not come back from Vietnam. I had no connection with the racial part. But we had a student in our class. Now, I'm not going to name this gentleman, but he is a great guy. I don't know him really well. He was at our 50th class reunion and stuff. But recently, our hometown newspaper did a story about him. And reading that just made me feel like crap. Okay. Let me share with you a little bit about what happened to him while he was living in Columbus, Indiana. I think he still lives there, but back then, okay, his parents moved to Columbus because they were hired by J. Irwin Miller, who at the time was the CEO of Cummins Engine Company, and he was trying to bring more diversity into Cummins, and so he hired a number of Afro Americans and brought their families into Columbus, but he couldn't keep them on the management team for very long because they would quit and leave, and he didn't understand what was going on. So he brought a group of them together to sit down and talk about it, and he learned from them that the reason why they were leaving was because, well, number one, they were not welcome in Columbus, Indiana, and number two, they couldn't find housing. They couldn't find decent housing, places to live, to raise their families, things like that. So J. Irwin started buying homes himself and reselling them to the black families so that they would have decent places to live. So that was a beginning right there of problems for that family and all those black families. He also tells the story in the newspaper article about when they would go out to dinner and they would go to a restaurant, and when they would get to the restaurant would say something along the lines of, the chef's not here tonight, or we are out of a lot of ingredients, so we're not going to be able to serve you. And they would have to leave. He talked about the time when, it was maybe it was either our junior or senior year, and he wanted to go to the prom. Now, the problem he had was that the other black girls in the school were his relatives. And so he can't take one of them to the prom. So he invited a young woman from another high school in another city to come and go with him. And the school said no. He could not do that. He talked about how later on, when he did go to work for Cummins, and he would go out to the bars, and there was a particular bar in Columbus, very popular bar back then. Not so popular now. But back then it was the bar in town. And that one time he went with them and he walked in through the front door, and the owner, stood up to him and said, "What are you doing coming through the front door? Isn't the back door good enough for you?" So he's supposed to come in through the back door. I mean, this is stuff that is just in an article about him growing up in Columbus and how he has become the man he is today. I'm not going to share his name because I don't. He doesn't know I'm talking about this, so I'm not about to throw anything out there that maybe somebody will use to attack him or anything like that. But, here's the situation. See, I didn't even know this stuff was going on. And it kills me to think that I was unaware of it. I was blindly unaware of it. And I have to say that it's my fault. It's my parents' fault for not showing me this. and not teaching me the right way to handle this stuff. And today, here we are in a situation in the United States where it's almost like we're back to the 60s again. But we've got a situation here, and we've got a movement going on right now that Black Lives Matter. And you know what? I'm on board with that. I am completely 100% on board with Black Lives Matter. But I have a problem with that, and that is my heuristics. Because you see, my heuristics is who you are. It's the things that you were embedded with from your family, from both nature and nurture. It's how you think. It's what you believe in. It's your perspective of the world. It's taking all the experiences you had growing up with your family, with your friends, with your church, with your school, with the sports that you played. Whatever it was that you did impacted how you see the world right now, and that's called heuristics. And it means that you see the world through your eyes. That's what it means. Now, let me give you the definition of heuristics. I'll pop it up here on the screen for you to go along with me. But here it is. Individuals assess probabilities based on their familiarity with a certain task, idea, or environment. Humans attempt to frame a decision based on prior situations confronted and successfully negotiated. Individuals start at one place in a decision matrix and adjust from that initial point. What does that mean? It means that we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. I see the world from my white eyes and my white experience. That's what I see it as. And you know what? Right now, I'm embarrassed by the people who are talking about this thing about like, oh, we have to make sure that all lives matter, not just Black lives. All lives matter. Stop it. The only people who are saying that are white. Okay? And let's make sure we understand something, because if in fact you believe that, if in fact you believe that all lives matter, guess what? That means that a segment of that statement is also true. And right now, the lives that matter the most right now, the lives who need help, who need our support, need us to understand, are the Black lives. The Black Lives Matter right now. It's like my smoking hot wife, Kay, told me about how she was reading an article about this, and the writer was saying something along the lines of that, you know what, all the forests in the world matter. But right now, we got to pay attention to the rainforests, because those are the ones that are getting decimated the most. And so that's where we are right now. When I read the stories, when I watch the TV, and I watch a white cop kill a Black man in front of cameras, and he knew that people were videoing this, okay? He thought he was going to get away with this. And all these other situations where Black people are being harassed, they're being hounded, they are being beaten, they're being spit on, they're being killed. Come on. What do we got to do? You know what? I'm a kid from the 60s, and I'm like, are we still here? And you know what? That's my fault. Because all this time, I'm watching the world through my eyes. These eyes right here. Heuristics means that we can't see the world as it is. We can only see the world as we are. And and that is the first step in acknowledging that we are not seeing the battle for what it is for the Black people. If I don't acknowledge that I am not seeing it through their eyes, if I don't start there, I'll never understand. I'll never understand. So, hey gang, this might not be popular. Might lose some subscribers. If you want to make comments to me, go ahead. Be civil. If you're not civil, you're boomed. You're gone. All right? And if you don't agree with me, that's fine. You don't have to agree with me. We don't have to agree with each other. Okay? But this is my view now. And I need to learn more about them. Black Lives Matter. This is Steve Miller, better known as Kelly's dad and marketing gunslinger. I'll be back.